All right, what's up, guys? My name is Ryan Carr. Big thanks to Kevin Bunzeluk for having us do this presentation today for this great event. Really appreciate that. Glad I could support. Today we're going to talk a little bit about flips. Kevin had said that the crowd wants to hear about how to do a flip, how to identify a flip, how they really work, how to locate them in the market and stuff like that. So that's exactly what we're going to talk about. We're going to go through all the trials and tribulations of maybe a real-life deal. We can talk about rentals. We can talk about numbers, right? And make sure that by the end of this video, it'll be maybe a fairly quick segment, but at least it'll give you a rough idea on how to proceed forward if you need to do a flip for yourself, or if you want to do a flip for yourself. So a couple things we're going to talk about today. We're going to identify a flip. What has flip potential? Okay. We're also going to talk about buying MLS or wholesale. What does that mean, right? Some people buy from the MLS. That's great. I've done that. Some people buy from wholesalers or they buy private. I've done that too. That works awesome. Okay. A couple other things that we're going to talk about are calculating costs. Okay. We're going to talk about cost, budget, timelines. What is this going to cost overall so that we make sure you make money at the end of this? And just so you know, we are actually in a renovation project right now. This is a sheet of drywall. This is a house that's under reno. The trades are here. Thought it would be kind of cool and period correct to make sure that we do it in something very similar to what you're going to be looking after yourselves. Okay, so we're going to talk about these three things. We're also going to talk about when you go to sell. How are you going to do that? Talk about how to sell, whether it's MLS, whether it's private, or some other options, and we can talk about the ROI as well. How much money are you going to make or lose on this flip? Because not all flips can be profitable. You know what I mean? So you got to make sure that we evaluate on the way into the deal, so that we make sure there's enough meat on the back end so you come out ahead. Okay. Identifying flip. So some of the key features to talk about before you actually go out and buy a property are the features. So if anybody's looked at an MLS data sheet, that's a really good place to start. For the MLS data sheets, they tell you the purchase price, they tell you the square footage of the home, they tell you days on market, how long will it take to transact this property in your typical market that you might be looking at. We look at the GTA market. That's where I typically invest, so that's kind of what I'm going to speak about. I'm in the more eastern end of the GTA, so that's where I focus my business on, right? So as far as IDing a flip, using an MLS data sheet is a great place to start. If you don't have an MLS data sheet, I suggest you get a realtor. Realtors are a key piece of information in this market or in any market, whether it's a hot market, a low market, a seller's market, a buyer's market, it doesn't matter, right? You need to have a realtor because they've got all the information, and knowledge is power. Information is really important, okay? Something else to be noteworthy as far as the flip and identifying a flip is location, right? You want to know where you're buying, what that market is worth, right? Again, days on market, how long will it take to transact? Is it an inflow of people moving to the area? Is it an outflow of people moving to the area? Certain things like Detroit, for example. There's a lot of mixed emotions on Detroit. Manufacturing's having a tough time, but the properties are really cheap. Is it a buyer's market there? Is it not a buyer's market? Those are the kinds of things that you need to think about before you go and purchase a property, right? So location, we'll write that down. Location, MLS data, two big things that are really important, and of course, the cost. So let's focus on those three things. We'll talk about cost now, right? Cost on the way in, you need to buy cheap property. That's the bottom line. It doesn't have to be cheap in respect to the comparables in the rest of the market, but it has to be cheap, and you have to have enough spread, right? So that on the back end, there's enough meat there for you. So we're not necessarily looking for a low dollar property. We're looking for spread, right? Dollars equals spread. And what's really important to know here, right? If you buy a property for 100K and it's worth 200K, you have $100,000 spread. Okay? If you buy a property for 400K and it retails for 500K, that's still a $100,000 spread, right? It'll change your ROI because your down payment might be a little bit higher, that kind of thing. But your net money on the back end is roughly the same for for conversation speed. So that's something to think about. We're looking for spread, not for price, okay? But we do need economical reasonably cheap properties to do this in comparison to the final value. Okay. Now, buying on the MLS versus wholesale. So we'll talk about the MLS first. MLS is great, stands for Multiple Listing Service. The MLS is basically the go-to for any first-time home buyer, for a lot of people who don't know how to stir up private deals for themselves, for anybody that doesn't know a wholesaler, for example. So the MLS is what realtors use to list properties and to buy properties. Anything that gets put on the MLS will go on, in our case, realtor.ca, right? The MLS is a great spot for general information. It doesn't give you as much detail as an MLS data sheet would, let's say through TRAB or something like that. Just on a real estate board, but it'll give you a ballpark on what they're asking, you know, general features of the property, where it's located. Maybe you can do a drive-by if you're close, right? So buying on the MLS is great for info, right? And that's where your realtors will typically go, okay? As far as on the realtor side, that's where they put all of their commission agreements, right? You get all the proper forms when you use a realtor. It's very, very clean and very user-friendly, which is really important to note. For anybody who isn't used to transacting real estate, user-friendly. For anybody who isn't used to transacting real estate, this is the only way to go. Don't go out and buy private. Don't go out and sell private. You're probably going to do more damage than good, right? So make sure that you understand the ramifications of using a realtor versus not using a realtor. If we talk about some of the wholesale deals or private deals, right? Private deals. Private deals are great because sometimes you can get under market value properties easier than on the MLS. Okay, so under market value, we'll say UMV. Under market value properties are the key to making your flip work. So when we go back and we tie in how to ID a property, this is a big part of it, right? Locating something that's cheap or that has enough spread so that we can do what we want to do and come out ahead. Okay, under market value properties are, in my opinion, the only way that I would comfortably proceed in those cases with purchasing a flip. You need to have the meat there, right? With a private deal, sometimes you can negotiate with the seller directly or through a wholesaler that will take a commission, or not a commission, but a cut or a markup on the resale of that contract. Negotiating directly with the seller is good because maybe you can identify their needs, whereas when you're transacting through a realtor on the MLS, a lot of that dissipates. You don't have a chance to talk to the seller, right? So this is really important because you can sometimes come up with a quicker transaction for the seller and maybe for a less price, and you can find some common ground to make the deal happen more favorably. So dealing that way is a really good way to go. Selling wholesale is also an interesting topic. We'll talk about that here on the back end when we talk about the selling function of this transaction. Okay. Wholesalers are also known as the people that put up those "we buy houses fast for cash" signs. I have some of those signs myself. They work great in some markets. They don't work great in some markets. You know, some people find it kind of unusual, right? But the truth is, there are people out there all the time that are looking for different scenarios to sell their property that maybe you can provide. So if you can find some solutions for that, it's a good spot to be. Okay, we're going to talk about calculating costs for a flip. So once we've found a property, let's use a round figure of a deal that I know quite well through some of my partners and stuff like that. This particular gentleman bought the property for $350,000. Okay, and that would have been in we're going to say mid 2016. $350,000 purchase price. He was going to duplex a property, right, which would have cost approximately $80,000. Okay, $350,000 purchase price, $80,000 in renos. We're going to have a closing cost of approximately 1.5% of the purchase price, which in this case is $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, about $4,500. Which brings our grand total to 230, 330, 333, sorry, 4,800. Somebody give me a calculator. This is crazy. This brings our grand total to 350 plus 80 plus 434, 500. Right? After we calculate our rough costs on the renovation, the purchase, the closing, all that stuff, right? We get an initial budget of $434,500. The after repair value, right, or the ARV on this property was $500,000 when he purchased. Right? If we work that out back, we're going to see an immediate profit here. So let's calculate exactly what that is. 500,000 minus 434, 500. That's a net, or that's a gross profit of 65,000. Right? That right there would be considered a suitable flip. For anybody in an average market that could buy a fixer-upper home, put a basement apartment in it, do something like that, that makes sense, right? Now, this is the gross number. That's the top profit number. As we back out some of the soft costs and hard costs and stuff like that associated with this transaction, you'll see that that number dwindles and dwindles and dwindles until we get to the very core essence of what exactly we're doing with the flip and how we end up when we're all done, okay? Now, if we sold that property at $500,000, let's assume that we're going to be using our realtor that we used to locate the property to transact the property on the backside. Using the same realtor over and over and over and over and over supports them, and in turn, they support you. Don't go jumping around from realtor to realtor. Find somebody that you like and really stick with them. Okay? 65,000 gross profit. If we sold this property at 500,000 bucks at a 4.5 or a 5% commission rate, we'll say 4.5. Right? That's a 22,000 plus HST. $25,000 in commissions. Okay, so right off that gross number, we immediately have to subtract 25,000. Off the 65, that's 40K. So you can see that's a big chunk of this transaction. You want to make sure that you account for that in the backside when you're purchasing. Right, 25,000 bucks is a lot of money. Right? You want to make sure that on your gross margins, you can support that. You don't want to put yourself in a situation in the end where you have to sell private because there's no money left, right? Or you have to do something or rent the property for a year so that the market catches up, right? In a rising market, you don't want to put yourself in that situation because that's not giving you flexibility. That's not giving you options. That's not a good place to be. If you're in for a quick flip, in and out, right? That makes for slow money, and slow money loses to fast money all the time. You want to make sure you can look after it in this respect. Make sure you have margins for an MLS sale. Okay? So now we're down to 40,000 gross. Okay? We've got some other costs on top of this. And I want to really stress on the soft costs on the side of this transaction. Certain things that a lot of people actually don't think about when they go in and they purchase a property. So what I've calculated for here is 4.5% plus HST. Some people don't think about HST on the actual commission to the sale for the property. So 4.5% plus HST brings us back to 5%. 4, 5, 6, 7%, maybe a normal commission in your market. You need to plan for that. Make sure you factor in that HST. That could be a couple $1,000 bucks, and it could make or break the difference between going ahead and buying the property or saying, no, there isn't enough meat in this for me. Okay, so that's gross. Let's talk about some of the other soft costs. Flip. You have to insure the property when you buy it, or they won't be able to put a mortgage on if you're using an A lender, for example. Okay. Typical house insurance policy in this area is $1,000, right? You can't get a month-to-month policy, so you have to buy a $1,000 policy. You might be able to pay for it monthly, but if you cancel it, you're still responsible to pay that out. $1,000. That's important. That's $1,000, right? $1,000 for insurance. Fuel and auto expenses, that's something else that a lot of people don't think about. If you spend 6 months driving from one location to the next, you might have a leased vehicle. If you have to pay 24 cents a kilometer on that leased vehicle, that could be thousands of dollars. So let's budget in $500 for mileage. for auto expenses, for fuel, right? I'm just going to put a round figure of 3 tanks of fuel over the course of the flip project, picking up materials, going to meet contractors, picking up paint colors, that kind of thing. We're going to put a round figure of 500 bucks on that, just to keep it simple for this presentation.
I knew some behind the scenes footage for you.
Which one's mine?
Left. That was close.
We almost made it there.
It's going good, man. 16 minutes.
Yeah? Cool. So after we got the insurance, and as well as the auto expenses, something else that we have to think about are carrying costs. While we renovate this property, we're going to have to pay for things like our mortgage, right? Property taxes, electricity, gas, water, right? Utilities, all of that stuff. Taxes, utilities, mortgage. In our market here, we're about 300 bucks a month for property tax. So in our case, we're going to say this flip is going to take between the buy, the renovate, the sell, and the close. We're going to say 6 months. 6 months times 300 bucks a month is 1,800 bucks. Utilities. You might be 100 to 300 bucks a month in utilities for hydro, water, gas, all that stuff, right? We're going to say $250, or we'll keep it around. We'll say $200, right, for utilities per month times 6 months. Overall, that's 1,200 bucks, right? The mortgage. We are going to be 6 months again. Six months in and out. Our mortgage for a property that's worth $350,000 will be approximately, for round figures, $1,000 a month. Roughly half of that will be interest, half of that will be principal, which we can recapture on the back end, right? But for now, let's keep this easy. 6 months, 6 months times $1,000 that's $6,000, right? And we'll say that half of that is the principal recapture, so we'll say it's actually $3,000. Okay, so $3,000. So we've got stuff like that. There are more, but for now, this is kind of the bulk of what we need to look at. So if we take our 40,000 gross number after our renovation costs and our commissions, right? Now we're going to factor in some of the softer costs, like this. Oh, also bookkeeping. If you're doing this for a living and you do more than 1 or 2 flips a year, and you're doing this as a business, you're probably going to have a bookkeeper or some kind of accounting associated with what we're talking about here, right? Lots of receipts, lots of Home Depot bills, that kind of stuff. I would say on average $300 to $500 for bookkeeping and accounting associated with what we're doing. So we'll say 300 bucks. And accounting. Okay. So now we'll take our overall number of 40,000. We will subtract it from 1,000, from 500, from 1,800, from 1,200, from, we'll say 3,000, and 300. That brings us down to $32,200. And that hasn't included any mortgage penalty yet. Every mortgage is different. I like to use A-lenders and pay the penalty when I break it because my broker has been very good, right? And they look after the way that we run our business, right? Typically, that's 3 months interest on a flex plan or on a variable mortgage. That's $1,500 bucks is usually about what it is. We're going to factor that in. $1,500. And mortgage penalty. And when we go to sell, which we're talking about over here, you're also going to have some legals on the way out there as well. Roughly $1,500 bucks on the way. So we're going to say $1,500 and legals. That's another $3,000. Now we're down to $29,200 bucks. You can see that's quite a significant difference from that 65,000 gross number that we talked about up here. That's a relatively wide margin purchase, right? Which is really good, right? If you sold private or you had somebody that was interested in buying the property without going through a realtor, yeah, sure, you're going to save on the commissions, right? But you can't bank on that ever. So down here, when we take it back right to the bottom, our bottom number, 29,200, is a reasonably comfortable figure to predict. I mean, again, every market is going to have their variations. Markets go up, markets go down. In that 6-month time period, the market could do a nosedive or it could shoot to the moon. You never know what's going to happen. But if you reasonably predict this kind of outcome, doing this method that we're talking about here, right? That's a comfortable feeling because on the back end, you've got a fairly wide margin that you can go, either up or down and still come out ahead, which is good. Okay. Let's talk about some different methods to sell. So obviously we're talking about flips here. Your number one go-to is typically the MLS. If you're a realtor, you're obviously going to list on the MLS because you're getting half your commission back on the resale, right? If you're a private guy, MLS, 4 to 7% plus HST. That's standard in most markets, right? Every market is a little bit different. That's going to give you the most exposure, the best bang for your buck. Sure, there's services out there like ComFree or Property Guys and stuff like that. Those are more of a discount service. They don't offer the realtor assistance, so to speak, that your traditional MLS deal would, but that's an option. ComFree, Property Guys, right? So that's what you can talk about, in your deal. Maybe you have a partner, right? Something else we can talk about is just going straight private. No commissions at all, right? So offering a private sale is great because, again, maybe the buyer is somebody that you can work with, just like we did on the way into this deal, right? Working with the seller who has the property. Maybe the buyer can work with you as well. Maybe you can offer them a vendor take-back. Maybe they're an investor from a foreign country. Maybe they've got a different set of regulations that you haven't even thought about, right? In your calculations here, maybe they want to buy the property and rent it back from you for a couple months, right? Maybe they want a long close, a short close. It can have so many different options when you sell private that selling on the MLS doesn't offer. The only difference is you don't get the exposure, right? So that's going to be your sticking points there. See what works best for your particular property. Okay. Now, as far as selling, there is another option if you do want to maintain a partial ownership on the property, right? But don't want to give up the home altogether because you do have a brand new renovated house, right? So what else we can do is you can sell it to a JV partner. Maybe they'll purchase the property from you. You will maybe maintain a 50% ownership in that property. You get all of your capital back, right? Maybe you sell it at market value or slightly under market value to help your JV partner out. Okay, maybe you'll maintain a 50% ownership or whatever it is that you guys negotiate. This is a great way to build your portfolio. Not only do you have an asset that's appreciating over the years and your tenant is paying down that mortgage, right? You've got your money back and you still kept ownership. That's a great way to win. I mean, if your JV partner is cool with, say, a 50% deal, maybe this property cash flows $500 a month or something like that. Not only are you pocketing all of the money that you made here, but you're also making $250 a month, plus the principal recapture on the mortgage, plus the appreciation on the property long term. Right? So that's a really good win-win, a good way to prove yourself, to show a JV partner, yes, you can do it. Yes, you understand the numbers. Yes, you understand how this whole real estate thing works, right? And maybe they'll do more deals with you because of it, right? So it's a good way to build that portfolio. Another way to do it, rather than selling, is a refi, right? Buy, fix, and refi, pretty standard thing in the investment community. What you would do, the bank would put an appraisal together, and loosely, whatever the after repair value is, sometimes they come in there, sometimes they come in a little bit less just because the banks like to be conservative. But they will give you 80% loan to value, typically, of that number. From there, they will deduct the mortgage that you owe, right? And they will use a calculation with the new value minus what you owe, and they will give you a whole bunch of money back. For the purposes of time in this conversation, we won't go through the whole calculation on how to do a refinance, right? But it's a great way to get your capital back and maintain 100% ownership of the property. Of course, it depends on where the refi value comes in. Depends on if you can actually qualify, if you can carry the property yourself. A number of different stipulations there. As far as return on investment goes, maybe we'll go over here. ROI. Return on investment on a flip, in my opinion, is somewhat subjective. So you can go out and do a flip and make X amount of dollars, right? Maybe it's 29,200, okay? And have a relatively good ROI. So if you make 29,200 on, what's your input here? 20, 40, 60, 70. Okay. 20% down. 350,000. We'll just do a quick ROI calculation. 350 times 20%. 70,000 down payment plus 80,000 in rentals plus closing costs 4,500. Right, you are going to be in this deal 70 plus 80 plus 4.5 for about 154,000. Okay, if you divide if you divide 29,200 by 154,000 of input costs, you end up with an 18.9% ROI. As far as a buy and hold property goes, maybe that's not all that great, right? I typically like to shoot for 30% or better, right? But on a flip, maybe you're not holding the property, maybe you're not refining, maybe you're just doing a straight sale, right? And guess what? 29,000 bucks is still 29,000 bucks. For a lot of people that aren't doing, hundreds of flips a year or even dozens of flips a year, that's still a good income. There are people out there that would love to hit that number, right? It's 29,000 bucks. That's great. Okay. So I don't know. I don't necessarily look at ROI in a flip as a good appropriation of of math, but there are some people that do. If you're doing volume, yes, it would make sense. You want to pick the more profitable deals as opposed to the less profitable deals. Maybe you actually go in, buy, fix, and renovate the more profitable deals. Maybe keep them or sell them for yourself. But the other profitable deals that are of a lower profit margin, maybe you wholesale those out to another investor that has a different goal set than you do, right? So there's definitely lots of options here as far as the way that we run our math, the way that we operate our business, the way that we look at ROI, the way that we calculate our costs, right? And the way that we sell. So if you guys have any other questions, you can get me at rwcarinvestment.com. I'm Ryan Carr. Thanks again to Kevin Bunzeluk for having me out.